Hello everybody, welcome to another edition of Morning Java. I'm Chris Bradford alongside Matt Grubba. We're going to be talking a little bit of college football today. That's Matt's area of expertise. But first, we're going to be talking about breakfast sandwiches. That's my area of expertise. Get-Go Cafe and Market all this month. 2 for $6 breakfast croissant sandwiches. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. A little French flair there, but
yeah. Well, you've been covering enough hockey. You should have it. Also, don't forget the breakfast combo, like always, $3.99. Sandwich, hash browns, coffee. If you're not a coffee guy like me, they got plenty of drink options. Check them out.
No shortage of good options at the Get-Go Cafe and Market. Pretty good option for Pitt. Nice segue here. Pretty good option for Pitt football. Kenny Pickett. A lot of news surrounding this guy. A lot of anticipation building around the Pitt football season, mainly because of the quarterback.
Basically, since the Friday after Thanksgiving,
Black Friday,
when Pitt walked off the field winners over number 2 Miami, it's been about Kenny Pickett, and yeah, it's great. I've written about him. You've written about him. We've all seen the guy in spring practice and the spring game, and now it's time to see him really in action coming up this week. Pitt opens with Albany, 3:30 on Saturday this weekend. That is what people want to see, is how is he going to do under live fire? And you know what? The way he handled Miami, as a true freshman coming in there, Albany's going to be a little bit of a step down in it. I don't think he's going to take them lightly, because he's been itching to get out there and show what he can do too.
Yeah, the thing that's really impressed me being down at the Rooney Complex, looking at Pitt last week, was just kind of the respect that this kid commands. Yeah. He's a sophomore, and here he is, and they're going to have this guy around for 3 years, to really kind of build around.
Yeah, and you mentioned the respect. Alex Buchser, the Pitt captain tackle, senior, made the comment offhanded after one of their camp practices, just that Pickett's the only guy who can tell him to shut up in the huddle, and that says a lot about respect. We're still sticking with college football, Chris. We're talking about Pitt, Penn State, a lot of those teams getting started the weekend coming up. One local team already got started. Duquesne played the first college football game of any NCAA team, any division. They went up and played UMass, an FBS team. Took a tough one, 63-15, but that's a big step up for Duquesne, and that's something that you wrote about with the announcement. Duquesne's got a game coming up a few years down the road with West Virginia, and so they're really trying to step up their program and getting, the thoughts of maybe a Duquesne-Pitt game in people's minds.
Yeah, Duquesne's going to play down in Morgantown in 2023, a few years down the road. But Pat Narduzzi was asked about, what's the possibility of maybe Pitt scheduling a local FCS program? I mean, they are going to play against Albany, same FCS. But he was, not opposed to playing against a Duquesne or even a Robert Morris, which would certainly be a nice local tie, because those are two schools that, always hurting for attention, and the chance to play Pitt, at Heinz Field, that would be a pretty good, football version of the city game.
Yeah, it would, and I think it would be great for those programs. The one catch to me is, keeping in mind both those schools play in the NEC. Northeast Conference only went to scholarship football. They were more like the Ivy League, where they were a non-scholarship league up until about a decade ago. And so those programs are still really kind of catching up with teams from like the Colonial, where you've got Delaware, Albany, Villanova, schools that contend for national titles at the FCS level. But as the gap closes there, I think that really is a good move for, if Pitt football's going to put a Youngstown State, an Albany, somebody like that on the schedule, I think the gap's getting closer for Duquesne, Robert Morris. That would be huge for both programs. Really, it would get more people in the gates than Albany would, for sure.
All right, when we were talking earlier, we were talking about Duquesne opening the season up against UMass, kind of a weak team against, I consider a stronger team, or at least a stronger conference.
Right.
A lot of that's going on this week. You have Penn State going up against Appalachian State, kind of a David and Goliath type situation.
Yeah, but hey, don't count out Appalachian State. That's what Michigan did, and look what it got them about a decade ago.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
But yeah, you've got games like that, Pitt, Albany, Penn State, Appalachian State. But then on the other side of the coin, you've got some marquee games in week 1. Michigan, Notre Dame's going to be the prime time. Everybody's going to tune in game. The best game by the rankings is actually Auburn and Washington, 2 top 10 teams going at it. And then you've also got West Virginia locally. They're taking on Tennessee, so 2 major conference teams going at it there. So there's definitely two mindsets with it. I can see why teams want to get the momentum going, but if you're a team that wants to contend, I would think maybe a marquee game making a statement early would be better, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, if you're contending for a national championship and you don't want to get a loss, like if you're Penn State, scheduling Pitt is kind of a big deal, because Pitt's, maybe they are down a little bit, but that's definitely a team that could knock off Penn State, and they did it just, 2 years ago.
Right, and that really ended up costing them, because Penn State, would have been in the conversation for a playoff spot, probably would have gotten it without that loss to Pitt being their second, or the first of 2 losses on the year. So there's two real mindsets there. I personally like teams going up against the best they can, but with the format in college football where one loss can really be devastating, I can see why teams shy away with it. It's just a product of the system.
Well, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the kind of the biggest story in college football in the last, certainly the last week, and that's the story coming out of Ohio State with Urban Meyer now suspended for just 3 games.
Yeah, and it seems like almost a slap on the wrist when you see some of the other punishments that have gone out. Certainly, you think at Ohio State, Jim Tressel got fired over, guys selling merchandise and that sort of thing.
Yes.
Yeah, so it seems like a bigger issue there of how Ohio State's handling this versus how some other schools have handled it. But when it comes down to it, it's the school's decision. The NCAA, they're sort of hamstrung with what they can do because of the way some of their penalties have been taken away in court, right?
Well, yes, but when you allow someone to punish themselves, Ohio State kind of went light on itself. Yeah. I mean, 3 games for some of the accusations against the former assistant Zach Smith are pretty crazy. And this is kind of the problem with college football when you mention the Jim Tressel thing with the players.
Yeah.
These are kids who aren't making any real money. Urban Meyer is getting paid millions of dollars. He's bringing millions more into that university. It's just a bad situation.
And here's my question. When you go back in the day in college football, you look at SMU getting the death penalty, Miami and all their sanctions in the 90s, things like that. The thing that always got thrown out there was lack of institutional control. And I don't know why that term has become such like a thing they can't go to anymore. It's like clearly the guy in charge is supposed to be in charge, and when things go wrong underneath, whether it's an assistant coach like Zach Smith, whether it's players not behaving properly, it really falls on the head coach. It should. And I don't believe for a second, because I've been around enough Division I college football coaches, those guys micromanage everything. They know what's going on with every aspect of their program, and you can't tell me otherwise.
3 games. Too late?
Definitely.